ठीक है सर।
बाकी अभी कोई नहीं आया ना? कितने लोगों ने ज्वाइन कर लिया? अवध जी, अवध जी, आप बोल नहीं रहे, कुछ भी सुनाई दे रहा है?
हाँ ठीक है, क्लियर है सर।
तो कितने लोग आ गए?
अभी तो 3-4 लोग ही हैं, 3 अटेंडीज है। चार लोग भी है, कोई नहीं।
ठीक है।
ये एक बार लिंक दोबारा भेज दो, कौन सा है ये?
साइंटिस्ट का तो मेरे पास ही है ना, साहब को जो भेजा हुआ।
पढ़ने को तो जिससे ज्वाइन कर रहा है, वो तो यहाँ से आपको 5-6 लोगों को बनाना है। ठीक है यार।
3 बजे से ही था ना? Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome Verma Saab, Uma Shankar ji, and Subramanyam Saab. Others are yet to join. We are waiting for speakers to join.
हाँ सर, ठीक है। सर अपना साईं साहब गुड आफ्टरनून सर। अपना कैमरा ठीक कर लीजिए सर, ये आपको उल्टा दिखा रहा है।
हेलो भाई सर, ये भाई साहब को कैमरा उठा होता है, कैमरा ना प्राइस।
साईं साहब आपका कैमरा उल्टा है सर। करेक्ट कर लो। कर रहे हो?
मैं को नहीं कर रहा हूँ राशन, आप कर रहा हूँ।
अरे क्या change the virtual background? ये क्या हो रहा है? हाँ ठीक है। क्या हुआ?
नहीं, वो वीडियो सेटिंग करना होता है ना उसमें। ठीक है।
केबल भी आ रही है सर आगे।
अभी आ गया ठीक?
हाँ अब ठीक है, केबल आ रही है सामने।
कौन सी केबल आ रही है?
आपकी केबल आ रही है सर।
अरे ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है?
हाँ हो गया, चलो ठीक है।
थोड़ा बीच में भी कर लीजिए सेंटर।
फोकस कैमरा देखना, कैमरा ठीक करना।
थोड़ा लेफ्ट एंड राइट कर लीजिए कैमरा।
हेलो हाँ।
Check with others also.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Sir, you're mute, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
ये और कुछ है।
ये अभी बाद में।
ये ठीक है, नहीं तो देखे हैं हम।
ये नहीं
नहीं, ये
खाली रखने से रखने से।
ओके। हाँ
ठीक है। चाय भी दे दे।
फिर ये कैमरा का
क्या चाहिए?
ये वायर हटाओ इधर दो। हाँ ये भी दो, ये माउस।
सर मैंने सारे पैनलिस्ट को फोन कर दिया,
ओके।
बट एक्सेप्ट वो डॉक्टर प्रमोद देव ने, ही हैज नॉट पिक्ड अप द फोन।
हु?
डॉक्टर प्रमोद देव।
अच्छा ओके
हाँ
ओके
2-3 बार फोन किया, उन्होंने उठाया नहीं,
ओके।
पर कॉल बैक भी नहीं किया।
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Rakesh. How are you?
I'm fine, sir.
Very good.
एजेंडा चाहिए
Hmm?
कुछ चाहिए इसका एजेंडा होगा
ठीक है.
Good afternoon, Anil.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Anil.
Very good afternoon, sir. So today you have two back-to-back sessions.
Today is in the morning we had good discussion on gasification.
I was there for about an hour till I was called in.
Yeah.
I wanted to really be there for sometimes the interesting subject.
They have gone in the same spin.
Yeah.
Research. See, collaboration करो. Research से तो चलता ही रह जाएगा फिर.
Correct, correct.
Good afternoon, Rajesh Shankar ji.
Ajay, you are mute.
अजय सर आप म्यूट में हैं.
आप अनम्यूट हो गए
हाँ हाँ
Ajay,
एकदम ठीक.
so am I now loud and clear or too
Absolutely.
loud too
no,
loud
very clear, very clear. Alok is also there, so we can.
हाँ. Good afternoon, sir. आलोक जी हाँ वो भी म्यूट पे थे अभी ठीक हो गया.
Only Pramod is not there, is it? Let me check with Pramod Dev. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Are you connected? Because for panelists, they are given a different. I'll ask Ravak to get in touch with you quickly.
Yes, sir.
Please speak to Mr. Pramod. He's having some problem about password and all that. Just talk to him. Okay? Participants कितने हैं? Hmm?
60.
Hello? Do we wait for 5 minutes?
What's your expectation? How long this could take? Shai sir,
Yeah.
how long could this take?
Let's see. I sent a brief note to all the panelists. We can start now because only Mr. Pramod Dev is having some issue. So just another couple of minutes we will start.
Yeah.
And then how long it will take means depends on how, I mean, we will have 5 minutes from each one of you, 5 to 6 minutes. And then a few issues that I have sent a note.
Yes.
A few issues. So on those issues, we will discuss a couple of minutes each one of you. depending on how much we are able to sort of generate. And then we will leave some time for if any participants has to say something. That is outline. I had sent a brief outline. Have you received that? WhatsApp I had sent.
अरे मिला है सर, मिला है, सबको मिला है।
हाँ. Krishnan. Mr. Popli? Is Mr. Popli there?
Yes, yes, he is there. Except he is
Mr.
on.
Popli, are you able to hear me? तो सारे पैनलिस्ट क्यों नहीं आ रहे हैं? पैनलिस्ट को सबको आना है इसको.
Mr. Popli is on mute, sir. He is there on the
He is there, very
meeting,
much there, but
जो पैनलिस्ट हैं सबको आना
maybe
चाहिए.
but he has been on mute.
जितने लोग हैं
एक तो
उसको
ये
वो नहीं नीचे.
इंटरप्राइज आईटी और एक केस को
हाँ
और भी है।
हाँ. ये बस जो पैनलिस्ट हैं सब ठीक से आ जाए.
एक नहीं दिख रहा है, ज्वाइन नहीं दिख रहा है।
हाँ ठीक.
प्लीज आप डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए।
नहीं
नहीं, उनका ठीक नहीं चल रहा था तो डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया। आई थिंक दोबारा कनेक्ट करें।
Mr. Popli is muted. Rather tell Mr. Popli he can just initiate.
वो रावत साहब वो डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए हैं, पोपली साहब।
Hopefully disconnected. Okay, then we can start. I think it's we have two connectivity in this. All others are connected. One only for panelists like us, and another for all the participants. So I have just sent a brief outline. What I propose doing, just briefly introduce the subject, and then each one of you for 5 minutes or a little more than 5 minutes, you can say in general, and then a few specific focus areas we will generate and request for your comments on each one of them. I think this report of the World Bank is not India specific as such, but the way it has been done, most of the issues that have been brought out, they relate to India and South Asia in particular, because some points that have come in this report indicate that this energy security and energy access, etc., by mutual cooperation, things can be properly addressed, particularly the climate change issues can be addressed. So I think this relates very much to South Asia and very much to India, though the report is a generic report. It gives the statistics of the whole world on how utilities. By utilities here, they have made it very clear. By utility, it is not only distribution utility. This includes transmission and distribution utility both. So those problems have been discussed together, how it impacts. What they have tried to highlight that this energy transition that we are now into it, in view of this climate change issues and the way things are going forward, that is going to impact finally maximum the utilities. And by utility, I mean transmission and distribution. And the impact of this, and in this shift from fossil fuel to renewables over a period of time, would mean enormous amount of capex. That is, I am not very sure whether they are trying to caution, because that is not very forthcoming. But the indirect message that is coming, that when the utilities are financially stressed all over the world. In a statistic, they have said that hardly 40% or so of the utilities all over the world are able to manage their financials, because the burden of everything that is done on energy management finally has to be addressed by the utilities, meaning transmission and distribution. So that's not very forthcoming, but to me it appears that they're trying to say that a shift from fossils to non-fossil and in this energy transition is going to cause capex and intensity of capital will enormously increase for the utilities and they will have to manage this. And therefore, what the countries need to do. Where it falls short is that what should the utilities do? Like in Indian context, yes, we know the transmission will have to be more, certain preparations will have to be more, capex will have to be more. But what could it be done? I mean, when the financial, so it's not a transmission sector reform or distribution sector reform or any hint about structural changes or institutional changes that have been very clearly highlighted. But they have raised this issue of. So that is how this report is. And then I thought that it is better. I will bring some issues specifically. We will focus. But I will like you because whatever time I had and passed through that, went through that report, I could see that. But then you all would have gone into detail, and you will enlighten all of us on what this report is all about, what's the relevance in Indian context, to what extent we agree or disagree, and what needs to be done. So with that, I think now I can begin with maybe Ajay Shankar.
Thank you. Thank you. The World Bank report is sensible the way the World Bank reports are in a broader sense. I would like to use the time that I have about, how much time did you say?
5 to 6 minutes first round, and then we will have more.
It's 5 to 6 minutes. I would like to talk about how we are a little distinct from what the World Bank says and why we are far better off than I thought we would be. So two things. One is the Electricity Act and the way it was implemented. We have been very successful in getting private investment into generation and transmission. Now, this investment has not had difficulty in getting financed, partly because PFC, REC has been there, but partly the firms have been able to raise money. Now, the reason why they have been able to raise money is that the contract was a long-term PPA with a discom. And the long-term PPA, where price and demand risk was absent, made it possible for private investors to come in and succeed and take care of capacity addition on the thermal side as well as the renewable side. Now, this is in spite of the financial health of discoms not having become dramatically better, but it has not become dramatically worse. And in the market, the perception, and which is the realistic perception, has been that it's such an essential service that between the state government and the central government, it will not be allowed to sink in a financial sense, and therefore it will keep afloat. So this market perception has allowed India to succeed in a way which seemed very difficult. The point to be noted going forward is that the DISCOM as the central pillar needs to continue the foreseeable future, and any attempt at separating carriage and content would put at complete risk new investment in generation. So I think that's an idea which should not be considered seriously in the foreseeable future, because minus the risk mitigation of PPA with the DISCOM, we will not get new investment in generation and we will not get the new investment we need in terms of meeting the demand and demand projection. The other major point to be noted is, and that is important from point of the World Bank report is, and is relevant for developing countries, is that this is a sector where debt has to be in the domestic currency, because it is such that any foreign denominated debt, and many countries have done it, they will run into huge difficulties if there is a sudden shock in terms of the exchange rate, etc. And India has been wise. Our growth and expansion has, private firms may have raised foreign debt, but we have not gone in that direction. And the key point to be made now, and this is a point I made in a recent article, is that we have to provide long-term fixed interest rate rupee debt, and with the government taking the risk of interest rate fluctuation. This is a point made in the World Bank report. So government at a very nominal cost can take that risk of interest rate fluctuation, provide a long-term debt, and that long-term debt will make the development of storage in pump storage, CSP, etc., so much cheaper. The capacity cost of storage would come down. And if India is to make a successful transition, storage has to come up at the same scale as RE. If the two come up in combination, same quantities, then the energy transition is a low-cost transition because new thermal with the liability of fixed cost charge payment would no longer be required. Because today for reliability, we have the need for thermal and thermal fixed cost paid. But if there's enough storage, then no new thermal will be required. So I will rest at this. And one more point I would add, and that is India is a good example of taking the grid to every household. So I think we should be a little more confident in giving policy advice to other developing countries rather than leaving that space entirely to the World Bank. I think we have been shying away from going to other developing countries and saying that we have succeeded and we have some good lessons for you. Thank you.
All right, Ajay. Now, following that, can we have Mr. Rakesh Nath?
Yes, sir. I think what I understand from the World Bank report is that it covers 180 utilities, not the entire world, but only South America, Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and Middle East. It excludes China, excludes Japan, not Europe and Russia. The most important message is that meeting the energy transition and ensuring reliable electricity supply will require well-performing and financially sustainable T&D utility. The ground as given in the report is that 43% of the utilities are not able to collect enough revenue to meet even their operating costs. 18% utilities recover their operating cost only, and only balance 39% are able to collect revenue to meet their operating costs plus the debt requirements. And the low-income countries and lower middle-income countries have outstanding customer payments more than 5 months of revenue. Now, the situation is same as we have by our utilities in India: high cost of supply, low tariffs, operational inefficiency, high T&D losses, poor collection, planning, and that creates persistent cycles of underperformance and affects the maintenance and upgradation of the systems and increase dependence on the subsidies. I think the position in the, as Mr. Ajay Shankar has pointed out, is much better. We are in a much better situation than most of the countries which are considered in this report. The electrification of processes in the industries and the transport will result in rapid rise in demand. And the demand pattern is also likely to change. And it will require massive capital investment, particularly in the transmission system, as the solar and projects are located far away from the load centers. The growing customers going for the distributed energy sources, like in India also we have announced the PM Surya units. A lot of C&I customers are shifting away from the distribution licenses. That could affect the liquidity of the DISCOMs. The other thing that has been pointed out in the report is that the national and international commitments to decarbonization will create additional momentum to cross-border trade, which will help the utilities to reduce their cost and improve the network resilience through their renewable portfolio. The report also emphasizes the need for raising funds at low interest rates and longer tenure. The PFC, I mean, if you see the conditions of the Indian utilities, PFC report of 2024, which gives the data for the financial year 23, it indicates that the performance, operation, and operational performance of the distribution licenses is deteriorating compared to the previous years. The aggregate losses have increased to 57,000 crore from 27,000 crores. The ARR has increased. ACS ARR gap has increased from 33 paisa to 55 paisa. And the average cost of supply has increased by about ₹1. It has gone to more than 8 rupees. And the power procurement cost has also increased by more than 70 paisa. Surprisingly, the cost of power procurement in the RE rich states like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Gujarat is higher than the average power procurement cost of the utilities. Performance of the private discoms is better. Their CS is lower by more than ₹1 as compared to the state discoms, and the ACS ARR gap is 16 paisa compared to 61 paisa. And the AT&C losses are also 11% compared to more than about 16% in the state sector. I think as far as the transmission is concerned, it is taking place at a fast pace in the country, and that is borne out by the swelling order book of the T&D manufacturers in the country. They are not only getting orders from abroad also, so that also indicates that outside India also, a lot of expansion in transmission is taking place. The good thing is that the bidding of the renewable energy projects by SECI and other agencies, the prices are very competitive. Solar is around 260 to 270 paisa. Wind is about ₹3.20 or 3 to 340, and hybrid is 340 to 350, and wind, solar, and assured peak power is 464 to 596, which is, I think, quite good. And the round-the-clock power supply rate are also around 425 to 450. So the major cause of concern is that I think the renewable and the energy storage capacity is not adding at the required pace, the target that we have set up, lagging behind. And I think for the solar, I think major concern is the availability of land and availability of indigenous modules. These are the major issues. And I think other issues we'll take up in the specific sections.
Okay. Thank you, Rakesh. Can we shift to Anil Sardana?
Thank you. And let me bring out the salient aspects of what I believe World Bank successfully brought out. Eventually, in its quest to say as to how transition will take place, because I think that's something that they clearly seem to be concerned, especially as Mr. Rakesh Nath mentioned. They have taken typically the lower income countries and lower middle income countries. So they have clearly categorized a segment of countries which will find transition as one of the key challenges. And in that quest, let me go through the value chain on which they have remarked every aspect, especially related to India, if nothing else. One, they have very clearly said that if the transition has to be sustainable, then in the last mile, which is the consumer related aspect, one will have to reduce the input cost of energy. Because if the input cost of energy is not reduced, and they have not alluded to only pricing of the energy, they have said there is a lot of wasteful energy in two formats, especially. One is the AT&C losses that they have specifically brought out, which they have said is very wasteful in terms of buying extra energy. And the second part that they have mentioned is in terms of the need for efficient use of energy. They have specifically brought out, sir, two aspects. One, that the quality of life in these countries, particularly the lower income companies and lower middle income companies, will go through a very big delta change in the next decade or so, which will improve the demand. In fact, they have quoted Indian example to say by 2030, it will go to about 3,200 kilowatt hour from about 1,200 to 1,400 now, which clearly is showing the fact that two aspects. One is the quality of life imperatives. The second one is the cooling solutions, which will add a lot of demand in the next 10 years. And therefore, the wasteful part of energy must be avoided. That's on the last mile that they have covered. The next part, which is the bulk transfer of electrons, which is transmission system, they have said that in the next 10 years, this transition will be successful only because RE will come in remote areas. And therefore, that will have to be carried through large transmission systems. And I was surprised when they gave a number saying it will have to be 30 times more investment than the current level of investment as it exists in the transmission system. I'm sure World Bank must have gone into the depth of it, but that's a humongous number by any means in terms of the transmission itself needing such a large investment. So the third part, they have said that there is need on the generation side. They've emphasized on almost every aspect. First aspect is coal will continue in countries like India. They have clearly emphasized the fact that how one will be able to prudently use technologies which will not add to emission challenges, etc. And to that extent, I'll come in a minute. But they have said prudent investment in RE, particularly emphasizing how the load curve matching, how using RE in a very prudent format. Because I think the back of the mind clarity is that storage will continue to be more expensive, will still be elusive to some extent in the next 10 years or so. So therefore, while they have said RE will continue to increase many fold more, but prudent investment is very much desirable. Sir, on the other aspects, on the coal side, they've also mentioned about how one could look at the innovative means of bringing more molecular changes. And I think they alluded to the fact that one could use green hydrogen as the co-firing option with the coal, so that one can achieve lower emissions, and one can therefore continue to prudently use that. I have one just suggestion additionally, which perhaps World Bank has not mentioned. Keep repeating the fact that the specific coal consumption should be added in the merit order, so that the merit order is not just the variable cost, but also the fact that the specific coal consumption should be a factor, so that it's not that the pithead station keep guzzling coal and keep emitting a lot of emissions. So I think that's one factor that's missing, but I might just add from my side. On the nuclear, they have of course added that the nuclear through modeling should be added. But there I have 2 points that I will put as a panelist. Number one, that India as a country needs to solve the issue vis-a-vis the International Atomic Energy Commission, including the blockage that the reinsurers have created, not permitting the private sector to participate in the Indian quest for nuclear, including in the SMRs. While we are talking about SMRs being done cooperatively between public sector and nuclear power corporation, I think it's important that the private sector should also get its way through the resolution that we must have with reinsurers as well as International Atomic Energy Commission. And I will add one bit that I keep saying, that it's time that we should actually partner with nuclear power corporation and contract steam for 25 years and give them advance for that 25 years so that they can put reactor free of cost and not put capital of government of India, but capital of the private sector, and then run the combination as a good partner. Last part, in the fiscal prudence, they have given some beautiful examples. It was, in fact, eye-opener in terms of some of the aspects. Sir, they brought out that 72% of the utilities in these low-income countries and low-middle-income companies do not recover even operating cost and debt servicing cost. So I think that's a very beautiful example out of 72, in fact, 53 who do not even cover their operating costs. That means they are a severe burden, and they have obviously alluded to the fact that it causes subsidy regime, and which is a very inefficient method to run the utilities. So a good example. Similarly, interestingly, similar numbers, 72% utilities do not have price elasticity anymore, because they have given a beautiful example of the fact that their tariffs are already more than 10 cents. So they cannot ask consumers to pay more. And if 72% utilities don't have, elasticity left out in terms of charging more, I think it is important that the system must use efficiency and innovativeness to reduce cost and not go back to consumer to demand more tariff. But very, very good examples they have given on that part. Other factor that I didn't know this part, but in these countries, age of receivables and payables alike is almost 200 days. That was, sir, eye-opener for me, because I never thought receivables would be as high as 200 days in the system. So they have mentioned those as also as a part of the study. So all in all, I think a very important point of fiscal and operational prudence that they have emphasized, regulatory predictability, reduce risk on investment, which Mr. Rakesh Nath also mentioned and Mr. Ajay Shankar also mentioned. That's very important, that how do you keep reducing the risk on investment? And last but not the least, how does one look at the demand that is going to be generated in the days ahead? Sir, they have mentioned specifically that the AI, the artificial intelligence itself, will be one singular largest factor of spurt in demand. And the second they have said is the cooling aspects. They have said that these two will create tremendous spurt in demand in the next decade or so. And these countries will find it very hard to meet those requirements in the manner that they fiscally stand today. So while the value chain is already under pressure, how would they really innovate to manage their means is a big initiative that they have suggested that everybody should take, keeping consumer in mind, that consumer does not have any more elasticity to pay. I'll stop here, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, we'll come to specific issues later. Alok?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, sir, I was carefully listening to the views of my co-panelists. So let me say, sir, the report is very, very relevant, because whenever we talk of energy transition, we end up talking about coal or storage with solar. But the whole energy transition is dependent on two crucial inputs. First is the huge private investment which will require, and second is the electrification of energy services, which will increase the role of distribution utilities. As I say, if the share of electricity is going to double and energy demand is going to more than double, the electricity which will be handled by the discoms will be 4 times in the next 24 years. Sir, they have differentiated the utilities on the basis of ownership. I see what Ajay Shankar ji was saying, largely in India, in the foreseeable future, most of the utilities will remain to be government owned. Privatization will be at its own pace. So the corporate governance of the government utilities has been brought out in some aspects, which is very critical. The timely audit, disclosures, and the board strength in that regard, some progress has been made in India in terms of now RDSS. Most of the utilities are having their annual annual audit accounts in time. Some disclosures have also increased, and there is some attempt for improving the board level governance, but there's a lot of work to be done. I'm not as bullish about the utilities as was being made by some of my predecessors. Sir, if we keep apart the LPSC rule, I don't know how much it will be sustainable. Things are pretty bad in India still. Our losses, if you compare with Malaysia or Bangladesh, are still very high. And ACS ARR gap is increasing. The tariff is not cost effective. Debts are mounting. Grids have started paying subsidy, but if we don't take care of the cost control, what Anil Sadana was saying, our utilities will be in the deep trouble, because the cost should not be seen only in solar storage. It should be seen what is the real cost of integration when you run a system for each 15-minute block over a year. So I have one take. The challenge before the utilities will be, and also the regulators will be how to ensure affordability. India is a country of masses where affordability will be an issue. We may do whatever we do in act rules, but if affordability is not taken care of, we will not have cost-effective tariff. There are two aspects of the cost. One is the procurement, and procurement is the power procurement and the network investment what you made. If we see the orders of SERCs which are coming for approving the procurement, they are very ad hoc and not sufficiently informed. We should not say that our solar and storage has become cheaper, so let us go behind it blindly. The resources and the load profile of a state is very different from another state. Regulator and utility both need to do integrated resource planning, run a proper model, and procure what is the best for the state. That will be very much, because what we procure for 25 years, 20 years, it is going to be with us. So affordability will not be ensured if we don't procure prudently. In that context, the fungibility of RPOs is very important. We should not force the states to buy solar or wind or their hydro. The other aspect is the network expansion investments. If you have seen a comparison between the private utility and government-owned utility, government-owned utility, they don't drive value for money. Private-owned utility does the same job in half the money, because your selection of work, location of work, your procurement, and your maintenance practices, they don't yield the result. So the biggest take from the report is that in order to ensure affordability, both the utility management as well as the regulator should have capacity to see that procurement is prudent, is least cost, and there is value for money from the investment in network. The last point which is important is somewhere in the report is the government policy. In the new paradigm of energy transition, only regulator cannot be expected to make all the important decisions, because there are risks involved in new technologies, and there are big decisions required having a lot of impact on the new cost for a long time. So government policy will have an increasing role in the era of energy transition to see that only the prudent and genuine costs are passed onto the tariffs and utilities, and we take forward our energy transition at a pace that our costs are controlled. If there are any additional costs because of energy transition, those are government funded, or the soft loan are given to the utility and the procure, or if we are going to adopt new technologies, there is a VGF support from the government. So I will say in the end, the report is very topical, and India, things are not very comfortable, because we are a country where affordability of tariff is very, very important. And the way states are approaching the procurement of power and also the network investment, selection of work and their location, it leaves Not many things to be desired at the level of regulatory capacity and the utility management. On rest of the issues of nuclear and coal, I will come when we have a second round. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Alok. I think we had an excellent first round of a general overview of the report and also trying to relate it to Indian conditions. As I said in the beginning, even though the World Bank report is not India specific, but many, in fact, most of the issues that have been raised in some way or the other, we are quite connected. It reflects our situation. And if we enlarge the geography of this place a little bit to South Asia, then it adequately covers the issues that are involved. And in the context of what is happening in India and elsewhere, but more particularly in our country, that we are trying to see that the carbon emission and renewables and the rate at which we are doing. So I thought it is better because one is a qualitative discussion. Of course, renewable has to be expanded. Another is a little more realistic in terms of, if not 50 years, but a few more years now to see how best we are able to judge what the situation will be. So in that context, I tried to frame 5-6 specific issues. We'll focus only on them so that we can get in relation to this report or even otherwise, because things are directly or indirectly connected. So if we project next 15 to 25 years, 2040 and 2050, what do we estimate per capita power consumption? Today we are in the range of about 1300 perhaps. Capacity profile mix, thermal gas, hydro, nuclear, solar, wind, etc. Power generation mix, because that sometimes we are missing. We are thinking 500 gigawatt of or 600,000 megawatt of solar, and then its potential to do more than that. But India has to go a long way. We have not reached anywhere near many of the countries which developed with us, and still we are at 1300 kilowatt hour per year. So in each one of you would have done, I also did something and I put a piece some time back on this. What do you think in the next 15 years and 25 years would be our per capita, should be our per capita consumption realistically, and where do we put this? Because this question is a little loaded in the sense that would the renewables start getting into stress in terms of potential once we cross these deadlines, and therefore that is the issue that is just little loaded. So, and to that extent, realistically, how do we go about this? So I start with Ajay, only on this issue.
See, we want to be a developed country by 2047. So I think we need electricity consumption and production to grow at over 10% per year. When I was younger, it was assumed that it should grow at 10 to 15%. Last 8-10 years, it has grown slow because of COVID and other shocks. So I would assume, at least planning, assuming 15% per annum growth of consumption. And it can be brought downwards if demand doesn't grow. The second new feature, in which we have not been doing, is to project peak demand growth separately from energy demand growth. Because this we used to manage in the old days with power cuts and captive diesel for peak demand. Now that is over and should not come back. So I think DISCOMs have to plan and project for peak demand separately from energy demand, and peak demand, because of rising incomes and the increasing use of temperature control air conditioning, is going to rise much faster than it has risen till date. This year itself, I think I was talking to air conditioner manufacturers and they were saying they had never imagined they would get the kind of demand they got in April, May this year. Now, if we go forward on that, DISCOMs need to plan resource adequacy and PPAs to cover both energy and peaking demand. Now, when you come to the energy mix of resources, I take it that what is there today is obviously there, and when we will start winding down plants is a long way in the future. So, what is the least cost way of meeting this rapidly growing energy demand? Now, solar is cheap. Alok is right that system costs are higher. If you need to back up solar with thermal, where you pay the fixed cost for 80% PLF while the PLF comes down. So, but if you do storage at the same rate at which you are doing new solar, then you don't need new thermal to that extent. So to do storage at the same pace, government needs a far more active program of developing solar parks, because in solar parks you can do conventional solar plus concentrated solar thermal with molten salt storage. This is something where we are late in the world. We should be inviting bids as soon as possible to make price discovery. For concentrated solar thermal, bids were invited when I was associated with the launch of the solar mission. One plant of 50 megawatt is still running at a 12 rupee tariff without storage, and the operator told us that it is probably completely trouble-free. Maintenance costs are minimal. And globally, CSP has matured. Dubai has a tariff of 7 cents a unit. Now, if we go in for aggressive bidding time and again, and mirror manufacturing comes to India, I think we will see in CSP with storage a decline in costs similar to what we have seen in solar. And if in that solar park you have both solar plus CSP with storage, transmission capacity utilization rises and it becomes comparable to normal thermal. And that pricing distortion and transmission which is there today need not be maintained. We should do away with the cross subsidy and aggressively develop parks. Then on pump storage, I'm glad budget has announced the need for a policy, and my public appreciation to the pioneering work done by Alok when he was secretary in making this happen in a few months. I mean, the whole shift in policy. And pump storage in India, the CE assessment is 93 GW on rivers. Off river, we can do mapping with satellite imagery and find out what the sites are. Because if we do mapping off river sites, then developers can easily choose sites because they cannot do this mapping. But I believe that India can it started developing renewables because the engineering capacity, the capacity of developers is of a very high order today. I mean, today the India is very different from where it was when we were struggling to find private investment in generation and distribution. So if the policy mix is right, renewable plus storage can give us all the additional power we need. But to the extent we do not create enough storage, we'll have to rely on thermal. And for peaking, I think we will need to consider using the stranded assets of gas and then using the stranded asset of the captive DG sets which are lying idle. They may turn out to be cheaper than building new thermal for summer peaks. And finally, we may have to consider using hydrogen for summer peaks, but it will all depend on price discovery as we go down the road. So, to sum up, we must look at a very high rate of growth of demand, a very high rate of growth of peaking power, and a far more aggressive action by discoms and the SERCs to procure capacities to ensure reliable supply. My worry is the low demand growth of the last 6-7 years has generated a false sense of complacency in everybody in the system.
All right. Okay, Ajay. Well, I also thought that a little bit of quantitative analysis, maybe we may do it separately, because as I said, and I think there is some issue which will bring that out. I leave it there. Rakesh, on the first issue of specifically if we project 15 years from now, 2040 and 2050,
Yes.
how do we, and also I also see the type of growth that should happen to reach a reasonable per capita consumption of electricity. How do we estimate all the energy mixes to change?
I think the national electricity plan, which has been notified very recently in May 2023, gives the growth of less than 7% per annum for 10 years. And with this growth, I think we will not be able to achieve even more than 1,800 units per capita consumption compared to 39 now. So unless the growth goes to double digit, getting even closer to the world average will be very difficult in next 10 years. So the projections, it's very difficult to give a projection for next 20 years, but 10 years, of course, one can take 10-year projection, what have been given to meet the energy requirements of the country, 900 gigawatt. The present capacity is 450 gigawatt. So addition of about 460 gigawatt has been proposed. And the capacity addition proposed in the plan is 42 gigawatt. Though recently I read a parliament question where government is saying that they are going to increase it to 80 from 40 to 80. Because probably the targets of non-fossil fuel generation are not likely to be met. So I think they will have to spend more on the coal. But I think energy transition without reducing dependence of coal is not possible unless we have a radical change in the capacity addition in the nuclear. Good that in 2024 budget, government has announced private participation in modular nuclear reactors, but that will take some time to take shape because the technology is not clear, R&D is required, and some parts will be built in that. So it will take time. And the nuclear capacity that has been planned in the next 10 years is hardly 12 gigawatt. So it will take it from 8 to 20. So the percentage contribution of nuclear is likely to remain around the same 2% in the installed capacity. The non-fossil fuel capacity, that RE plus hydro, we have proposed addition of 400 gigawatt in next 10 years, next 8 years, from present around 200 to 600, 400 is to be added. In 8 years, we'll have to add about 50 gigawatt per annum, which seems very difficult. The land acquisition problems and all that. So presently we have the best we have done is 18.5 gigawatt per annum. So even if we go to 25 to 30 gigawatt, still we will have a shortfall of 100 to 150 gigawatt. Even if we include the PM distributed energy generation in captive, industrial, commercial, and the resident PM Surya, we are likely to fall short by about 120, 130 gigawatt by 2032. And I think will be made up by increasing the factor of the existing coal-based generating station and also adding new capacity. So the energy contribution from coal next 10 years is not likely to reduce, it's going to increase. Even though the installed capacity contribution will come down. So that is all I want to say.
Okay. Anil, what are your, of course, there are some other specific issues. We will cover them also, a couple of minutes on this. What is your projection of 10 years or 15 years?
Sir, I would pretty much be more optimistic about India's growth. And I guess I drive this confidence from 2 or 3 key aspects. One, as I said, India would certainly, because of its geographical advantage and advantage of literate people, we will be one of the biggest hub on AI storage as well as the data processing centers. So that adds disproportionate load. In fact, globally, wherever these data centers have come in, one has seen that the load growth is humongous. The second part that I am very bullish about is the low per GDP cooling index that we have. Just for the benefit of everyone, today's India's per GDP cooling proliferation is 8%. China is about 51%. US is about 110%, and Europe is 150% per year GDP in terms of having treated cool air at their homes. Now, if you really look at the projections made by Foursome, which means LG, Samsung, Voltas, and Daikin, these four, if you discount their projection till 2030 by 50%, India will need just additional 100 gigawatt just for cooling solutions exclusively. Because people today, let me take example, sir. If we go 10 years back, we will remember a lot of vehicles, at least four-wheelers, which will have their screens rolled down because they'll be non-air conditioned. I don't think so today you can recall even a single vehicle which is without air conditioning in the car. Similarly, each home would have absolutely at least cooling air as an imperative. Have started dispensing with water coolers, people have started moving to air conditioners, and I'm seeing this trend, and I also hear this from the primary survey we did with these four people. So that's going to add a big sizable chunk and a consumption in the next decade and longer, since you're also asking till 40 and till 50. So I personally believe that India will see much higher delta growth on these accounts. And the last but not the least, if I was to take the trend because of the PLI, productivity linked incentive, that at least I see today in textile, or I see today in 2 or 3 things which have taken off the ground in Burma, I believe it might hit similar positivity in many other areas where PLI is being put. If that is so, that will again add to a lot of manufacturing demand that India might start seeing 3 to 4 years from now. Some of those examples we are validating are clearly reflecting in terms of the manufacturing growth bringing onto the green part. So I'm personally very bullish. I think we will be able to see consistently 7.5% growth, and it could touch 10% if we take periods beyond 2027 onwards because of the factors that I mentioned. In terms of the generation profile, I guess India will continue to offtake all formats. I agree with my previous panelists that the RE continuing to spurt up the way it is happening. We'll see advent of pump hydro storage, which is already showing up a lot of good offtake. Storage batteries will start to show up 2 to 3 years from now in more bigger numbers. In fact, there is a talk going on that the ISTS free should be enjoined with compulsive ESS to the extent of 25%. So that will mean that you will see pump storage and batteries coming alongside as a compulsive methodology, and not just keep adding to the cost of transmission because it's not being used, right? Adding capacities. So I guess we are seeing some of the good aspects happening in the policy imperatives and the push towards the right solutions. The only worry that I have is the fact that the last mile, which I see a lot of panelists as well as, sir, you would agree, is one part that we need to hound the polity to reform the last mile, because the last mile is the biggest deterrent why things are not moving at a pace. Because if that happens, automatically with the containment of tariffs, with the higher efficiencies coming into the last mile, I believe the offtake is there for us to harness. I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, Alok, on that particular issue on
Sir, I'm
projections.
little confused. Other panelists are also touching nuclear, and also do I talk everything now, or I talk limit to only this aspect?
Only this aspect. I thought that it's better with structure.
So I'll be very brief. My analysis is a little different. Going by the projections of IEA and other countries and world over, a long-term growth of sustained CAGR beyond 6 and 7% has never been seen. Maybe some spurts. And if you take macro picture, currently electricity is around 19% of the energy services, and at the best it can go to 40% by 2047. And Niti Aayog says the energy growth will be 2.1 to 2.5 times. So at the most, it could grow by around 5 times the per capita consumption. So my assessment is, to be very precise, something around 5 to 6,000 unit per capita, because this is a long-term projection. Sir, the non-fossil fuel based capacity, as Rakesh Nasa was saying, is likely to be around 68-70% by 2032. And we had done some computations while preparing a vision for 2047 in a group of secretaries. And we had very tentative projections that India would have an overall capacity of around 2,300 gigawatt, out of which close to 89-90% will be the non-fossil fuel based capacity. So maybe around, say, 2,000 gigawatt will be the around non-fossil fuel capacity, mostly renewables and some nuclear and hydro. And generation mix will be, say, around 75% of electricity might come from non-fossil fuel based sources, which is currently, other way it is, currently we are around 25%, and fossil fuel is around, so it will reverse next around 20 years to 75% from non-fossil fuel sources and 25% maybe from fossil sources. Those are my assessments and my analysis. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I see, I think Pramod also joined. Dr. Pramod there? Pramod?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We missed you for first aspect, and now we are discussing some specific issues. What do we think would be the projection in the next 10 years and 15 years? What would be the relative positions in terms of megawatt and in terms of generation mix? That is, 4-5 issues, we will discuss a couple of minutes on each one of them. So you can make some general comment because the first round we missed you. Pramod.
You want me to give general comments?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, please go ahead.
See, one of the issues we always have faced is the distribution. And since we have so many layers now, whose financial position is a matter of concern, that still continues, discount. So we expect that is going to change because we have been focusing on what will be the demand, what will be the supply options. The question comes is finally, last mile comes the discounts. But for the discounts, they have got really a Herculean task. I don't know how we are going to deal with that, because the central government has tried to do it by framing rules which also impinge on the regulating powers of the commissions, etc. Now, is this the right way to go about it, or we should accept this something which is unavoidable? Because since we cannot amend the Electricity Act, we are trying to find this via media. That via media, to what extent is viable, I have my doubts, because finally the state level discounts will do whatever they want, unless they are so dependent on the center that they will be. So this is something which is a very old problem that we have been all the time looking at the supply side. But from the demand side, capability of your distribution network and ability, that is something which I want to, we need to focus. So I'll just stop here. I want to highlight this point. We should not ignore it.
All right, okay. Let's take the other round now. I see in many debates it comes, I think roughly in the energy group, power group, we have views. One view is that we need to be a little more bullish on renewable and follow the path that has been projected at the political level. Another view is that since it requires a number of other costs, like we talked about transmission, and transmission gestation period is not same as the gestation period for say solar, and then backup is not available, battery is not available. So therefore, are the demand projections with the time frame that are being talked, are they overestimated or they are realistic? One is desirability of having renewable, another is practicability of having renewables in the time frame that we are talking. So specifically, I hear two types of things. One is too optimistic, where being bullish without understanding or without realizing the other problems. One problem of also overcapitalization, problem of also the gestation. And at the same time, backup not being available. So specifically, how do we react to this? Ajay?
My first point would be that we are being unduly cautious in estimating our ability to add RE capacities. When the solar mission began, the target was only 20,000 by 22. We achieved a multiple and far more than was expected. The problem in increase in capacity has been that SECI has been very slow in inviting bids and awarding contracts. I am not aware of any developer defaulting on a contractual commitment or bids not being received. Now, if SECI takes the view that every successive bid has to be lower than the last bid, then we should give up the program, because you cannot have prices going down to zero. So if it's a fair, transparent bid, the price is 10-20% higher, contracts must be awarded. So if capacity expansion has come down, it is only SECI which is to blame. It is not the developers, it is not the availability of money. The second point to be made is that we have a huge distortion that we are only doing the large projects. Now, economically decentralized generation is cheaper. Generation at the load center is cheaper, and PM's announcement of this, 1 crore households rooftop solar is a welcome correction in the right direction. I see politics driving that program to cover all low-income households in the next phase. Now, this alone gives us 30 GW, what PM has announced. Now, if you cover all relevant households, you're getting about 150, 200 GW through this route. Now, the concept of Kusum was very good, but I think the program design was a little flawed, because it assumed that an individual farmer will take a subsidy from the central government, the state government, the bank loan, etc., and it's gradually getting refined. But the correct way forward is a straightforward feed-in tariff for rural areas in the kilowatt range. Now, you put it in the kilowatt range, and farmers will make away their wastelands, or where they keep the cattle, etc. And if I assume 1 megawatt per village, 600,000 villages, 6 lakh megawatt is the market size which private market forces without any subsidy will create. So that's an area we are still to tap. And only yesterday, one of our younger colleagues in Terry was telling me that in Najafgarh, they have put up a 2 megawatt plant at a 3 meter height for agri PV so that crops can be grown underneath. The price is higher, it's 5.5 rupees instead of 3.5, 4 rupees. So there is no shortage of potential for generating REs. So we have been responsible in not accelerating it rapidly enough. And you see what China adds every year. There's no reason why we can't do it, and our developers are strong enough. I'll make one more point that in storage, we are not yet inviting bids. I mean, the concentrated solar thermal with storage, we had invited a bid in 2010 without storage and we got bids. Now, for 1 year, this idea is in the air and bids are not being invited. Now, if we don't invite bids, we won't get storage. So I think the government and the policy level has to show, I think, a greater energy and commitment towards PM's ambition of what we want to achieve. And I will add one more point, which to supplement what Sardana was saying, that we are not seeing the transition in the automotive sector. Two-wheelers will be entirely electric in 3-4 years. And the way these blue smart cabs are taking over, the way electric buses are running, I won't be surprised if in the four-wheeler side, EVs take about 80-90% of the market share in 10-15 years. And if that happens, all that energy which is coming from diesel and petrol has to be provided by electricity. So I reiterate that we have to scale up our demand projections aggressively, create capacity. We can lower the need as we go along. But right now, I think we'll be making a huge mistake if we don't step up capacity creation very aggressively. Thank you.
Rakesh,
Sir, question I couldn't understand. What is the question?
the question is that are we over projecting in the time frame that we are projecting the renewables, which is, in another opinion, renewable is good, but it is unrealistically projected high, and therefore you have the issue of transmission in backup problem, you have the issue of storage backup problem, all of these backups taking their own time. So you are getting into a stressed situation. Are we over projecting with the time frame that we are talking about? There are two schools of thought.
Yeah, I think the projections are top driven. Problem is that the planning has to be done from bottom up. That is the main issue. Now the resource adequacy plans for most of the states have been prepared by CA. Now the regulators must now enforce these resource adequacy plans by the distribution company so that procurement starts right now. Mr. Ajay Shankar said about the SECI bidding. I understand that a lot of bidding has taken place, but the distribution companies are not signing the back-to-back contracts. So they are not able to proceed further till they clear the backlog. That is, I think somebody told me in one of the conferences I heard that more than 80,000 megawatt bids are ready, but the distribution companies are not coming forward to sign the contracts. So I think unless the distribution companies from the state level itself, the plans have to be prepared by the states as according to the demand curve of the state, and leaving the supplier to the supplier, means planning the power supply according to your demand to the supplier. I think not correct. Distribution, it is the responsibility of distribution companies to procure each type of REs, wind, solar, storage, hydro, according to its own load curve, not something a fixed percentage given by the central government. About storage, I think some little more push is required to be given, and some 2-3 large pump storage projects should be taken up on the case 2 UMPP pattern as was done earlier by the initiative of the government, where the capacity is tied up by the states. The storage capacity is tied up, and then we are ready to use the entire added capacity of solar and wind without any curtailment.
Anil, your take on this specific issue?
I already said that I'm quite bullish about the way things are positioned in India, except one part, which is the poor state of distribution companies. And I would therefore overemphasize that it is time that we get the last mile corrected. And if we don't get the last mile corrected,
Give me the
I
name.
think,
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
no. If we don't get the last mile corrected, then I think we're getting into a convoluted situation where what comes first is not very sure. Because while resource adequacy will be genuinely known provided somebody is doing a groundswell up and aggregating it correctly. It's a distribution company which knows what am I going to be confronted with in terms of load to be met in next 3 years, next 5 years, next 10 years. And if the distribution company is struggling to manage its means today, I think it will be very hard to assume that they will be able to do a very fine job in terms of resource adequacy. So therefore, that's what is bothering, I guess, the whole sector. Otherwise, we are at a takeoff stage. The country has tremendous potential. In fact, we get surprised by the way large brands are coming to India and saying, I need a 5,000 megawatt data center in 2 years because I need that load for AI. And we get, wait a minute, the whole country today has less than 1,000 megawatt data centers, including government. Government is 750, private sector is about 300, 400. Now, with that state, somebody coming and saying, I need for myself 5,000 megawatt of data center at one location. We haven't heard this. I've ran a telecom company. We haven't ever heard this ever before. Now, when you talk about 5,000 megawatt data center in actual consumption terms of the system, you will need 10,000 megawatt of electricity. So the point that I think Mr. Ajay Shankar made, and the point that I would want to emphasize, it is lack of clarity as to how we invite the investment by adequately planning for resources and telling them, I am all for you, please come, I will provide that in a reliable way. I don't think so there is any looking back for India. We are at that threshold. So I personally feel, barring the course correction that we need to do in the last mile, which Dr. Pramod Dey also mentioned, last mile is the critical, you can say, entity standing between aspirational India and current India. That's what I will summarize.
Pramod Devji, would you like to talk on this? Are our projections overestimated in the time frame we are talking, considering the inadequacy of transmission in that time frame and also inadequacy of backup?
You see, I find that World Bank had prepared a report that again they SMAP. This was way back in 91, which talks about what is the power sector. And the main thing they had come out with was the distribution sector, distribution companies, whether they were distribution companies or part of the integrated some integrated generation, transmission, distribution, combined thing. The main issue that came was their financial health and also the capability. So I find that after more than 30 years, we are still stuck at the same point. There have been many steps taken to strengthen the distribution sector, but fact remains that it is up to the state how to do that, go about it. So that's why I'm not willing to be very optimistic unless we can tackle that end of the distributes end use. That's what I will again reiterate.
Okay. Okay, Alok, your take on that point. One more point we will discuss, then we will ask any participant to say anything. Alok?
Sir, now I see that ramping up the renewables is very much desirable and is doable. There are two barriers On supply side, we have been following twin objectives: the localization, local manufacturing, custom duties, and this ALMM and all this lot confusion. So India has chosen to pursue twin objectives: capacity ramp up and also local manufacturing. That's why it's slow. We need to sort it out, otherwise the pace will be slow if we have enough local capacity. On demand side, I have a very different understanding. Like Rakesh Nasa was saying, the real problem is we are expecting discoms to contract through PPAs hundreds or thousands of gigawatt of the RE on must-run PPA. This must-run PPA was relevant when it was small capacity, maybe 5-10%. But if you go to 50-60%, it is not doable. And discoms will not, and they should not. Why they should take whole price and demand risk for future? So we have to go some market-based procurement, some investment, say some support to investors. Revenue is all right. We have to expose the RE generators to some market risk and also motivate to take some more innovative measures. They will set up, they will do better forecasting, they will set up storage themselves. But we can't expect this. I don't see the RE capacity ramping up unless until we change our procurement model and this regulatory philosophy of must run if we are going to have 1,000 gigawatts. So in nowhere in the world you have this model. So this is desirable, doable. We have to address the supply side, have clarity in our objectives. And secondly, we have to reform the procurement format and we have to say goodbye to this must run. They must be exposed to some little market risk and innovate. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So that is an important point. Like the question is, it is desirable that it should expand. It is desirable that SECI should sort of undertake this. But how does SECI take it? SECI is just intermediary. And unless the distribution companies do the PPA, distribution companies, they don't want to do PPA because they are not sure whether they will be able to sustainably honor this. So those are the practical issues. That's why I raise this question. These thoughts are coming. We are trying to avoid very definite discussion on these issues. And a little bit of sentimental part comes in. So therefore, we need to be realistic. I also feel going forward, you will have backing down of solar. Already it has started in some way. And solar is, mind you, not capacity charge and energy charge. It is energy charge only. So financiers have started raising this issue. That if you have to ask them to back down. And if they get only on the energy generated, then how do they sustain this? So these are the issues. I think India has avoided this discussion, and that was the precise reason I wanted to put, without loading this or that, this thought that are we not being very realistic of these practical problems of a backup. Evenings you don't have, you can't be asking a 2000 megawatt power plant thermal to come down to 500 megawatt or a 600 megawatt unit to come down to 200 megawatt. That is out of question. Flexibilization is an issue. Backup is a big question mark. And discoms feel that how do they protect themselves, as Alok was saying. I think this issue, again, I will try to have a discussion only on this issue. Only on this issue that...
So, sir, very relevant, sir. Just to intervene, we must have a separate India Energy Forum session on calls and discoms, what are their apprehensions and how to design it differently so that it is doable by discoms, sir.
So that means a very realistic projection, optimistic and realistic projection, and also try to, because I mean at the distribution level you do not have a definite answer of evening backup. That's a fact. I see in a number of utilities this point coming up now, generators, that backing down of solar will be there. Decentralized distributed generation, of course, does not add up to the gigawatt that you are talking about. It will be, it will take its own time. So I think that point, somehow, I mean, CA projection is different from the projection that Prime Minister might have given earlier. So they have taken a little more realistic projection in that 900 gigawatt, which we were talking, that is not anywhere near the projections we were talking earlier. I think there has to be. And then the other point in this is also, and the point was made, I think, it was made by Ajay or maybe Anil, that local manufacturing. Yeah, Ralok made that point. That if local manufacturing, to what extent it is supporting these projections. So I think renewable expansion, all love renewables, and all these practical problems of distribution companies. But somehow this World Bank report has avoided how do we take care of the financials of the distribution companies unless institutional changes happen. That part they have, I think, politically avoided not to comment on this. One more point we will discuss and then we'll ask any participant. Then that point is time frame. I will avoid this petroleum. One point is India's excessive dependence on petroleum fuels and gas is a cause of concern considering particularly the emerging geopolitical. So I think we can avoid this. This is not to do with what they have been talking. Considering that coal may continue to be relevant during the time frame we are considering, what specific and what technology and other options we must pursue to address the challenge of carbon emission. So, however best we want, all of us want renewable as fast as possible, but I think inevitability of coal for the time frame we are talking is there. And my own couple of articles I wrote, I established that even with the projection that we are talking about in 2050, the absolute value of billion units of coal-based generation will be more than the absolute value now. That is a calculations I have made. And then we can project solar everything on a higher side still will be high because we are nowhere near that 5,000 kilowatt hour consumption. If you have to reach 5,000 kilowatt hour per capita consumption, that would mean 4 times. So when you have to be 4 times, at that time, your billion units will be much more from coal than you have now. So given that situation, how do we handle the issue of carbon? Would you comment on that? Assuming that your projection of completely renewable does not happen, and we are faced with a situation by 2050 of larger amount of billion units of coal being there, coal-based generation. How do we handle the issue of your carbon CO2? Like it is happening now.
No, the answer is very simple. That carbon capture and storage is not yet an established technology for large-scale emissions from a thermal power plant. So to the extent we will burn coal, we will emit carbon dioxide. There is no escape. The only point, and here I want to again respond to the comments made by others and to an earlier point, that are dependent on petroleum can decline very rapidly and market forces are making it go down with the success of EVs in the market. So that's a demand factor which we are not taking into account. Now, all that we do in RE will run into serious problems, and as has been pointed out earlier, the DISCOMs are seeing a problem because we are not creating storage on the scale that is needed. And India has to become a global leader in large-scale grid-scale storage. Otherwise, the costs are very high. Now, Germany, 4 years back, for the first time, had to offer consumers money to consume more electricity because the RE storage was excess than demand, and they had no storage. So the system stability cost of paying the consumer to consume more electricity was lower than backing down of renewables. And this is where renewable 40% share of Germany throws from wind and wind round the clock. Now, when our 40% will come primarily from solar, we will have extreme problems of all kinds unless creation of storage is ramped up to keep pace with the new solar capacity addition. And I think we are very, very slow in recognizing this and inviting bids for storage. I mean, there is not a single pump storage bid out. There is not a 62 tariff determination for a single PSP. We are recommending that, like UMPP, government should spend money, prepare DPRs in a very aggressive space, then bid it out for development so that the developer doesn't take 2 3 years to work out the technical details. Off-river PSP is very easy to do. Abandoned coal mines are there, but it needs pioneering work, which only the state can do. Private developers cannot do that. And concentrated solar using molten salt for storage is a proven technology. It can be put up in any solar park. So I don't know why government cannot invite bids and get that technology coming to India. Because minus storage, we have no option but to build more thermal, and the CO2 which comes out will come out. There's nothing we can do.
Okay. Pramod, would you like to make any further comment on this? Pramod? Mr. V.S. Verma, are you, because you were trying to talk to me on this, V.S. Verma, you want to make some comment? Mr. Verma?
One point I would add that whatever we gain from supercritical, from conventional, or we'll get from ultra-critical, it is all marginal to the overall CO2 emissions.
These are other issues. I think many issues don't come up. And it is right what Alok said. We will have a specific discussion with a little more number of people from also DISCOM and of course generation people. This supercritical has another challenge. Backing down of generation on supercritical does not give you the advantage of the good heat rate. The partial loading of supercritical, it is counterproductive. So I make an 800 megawatt capacity and run it at 500. It does not give the advantage of the supercritical technology that we are talking about. The heat rate becomes equally bad. So if you are consuming, let's say 300 kilowatt hour per head per unit, and then you will consume same amount on this. And now in
This is why I have been of the view that all this ultra critical, etc., is all dated. The way forward is aggressive movement on storage. It is cheap enough. We're just not moving.
Correct. So those things have to come up. I mean, issue is tracing the path. The tracing the path is to be like this, or it is this or that. That is the point. So therefore, how do we do? Another dimension that has come on, particularly solar and solar, that say what happens after 700 gigawatt. Land also is an issue. I mean, to what extent you will go on, you can't. And 700 gigawatt, if you calculate 2050, after that you have nothing. Then again come back to the other conventional thing. So how do you do it? That 700 gigawatt is a big number. Today we are less than 100 gigawatt of solar. So these are we becoming a little, just making, all of us like that. Though everybody knows that if solar power can be have at 2 rupees 40 paise, 50 paise, without coal, without anything, why not? But then the issue is that when you go forward beyond, suppose you are trying to reach even what China is today. China is more than 5,000 kilowatt hour per head today. If you want to have per capita consumption of 5,000 kilowatt hour per head in 2050, and there is no reason why you should not have, then your ultimate capacity and potential of solar and wind all get exhausted. The other day I was doing, Adani have set up a 5.2 megawatt wind turbine factory, and there are areas which are limited which it can be done. So they will also be doing 3.2 megawatt, 3.3 megawatt. So I think those are studies that are needed. So you have compulsions. You have compulsions also on increasing this. Just as we have compulsion on coal that we can't increase beyond this because carbon dioxide or even coal will not be there. Similarly, we have compulsions on also renewables. So a very balanced calculation has to be done. I think this calculation needs to be done right up to 2070, which Prime Minister has said as the net zero 2070. But in 2030, 40 does not give a picture. That is why nuclear. Nuclear we want to increase the capacity. The more we want to increase the capacity in terms of proportion, proportion does not pick up. It still remains at 2%, 2.5% of capacity. So because your other number is increasing in a large, in a much faster way. So proportion remains same. So those are the issues that need to be discussed, we will discuss. So one specific out of this would be the rural expansion of rural and not renewables and the pace of expansion of renewables. We can take an optimistic path, we can take a not so optimistic path, and then see what are the backup preparations that are needed. On backup preparations, people were talking of hydrogen, we have not reached anywhere. On backup preparation, you are saying now distribution companies are reluctant to go forward on PPA. SECI, the other day I was chairing a session with SECI, I think chairman was there, and I said, I wanted SECI to be NTPC of renewable, but SECI has become the P2C of renewable. So they should also take some. See, that risk can be done only by them. Put the money on SECI, get the best of the financiers of the world in the name of renewable, and then they take the risk. They take the risk. Others cannot take the risk.
May I say?
Yes?
May I say that? 2 points,
Yes.
my observations. Number one,
Mr. Verma?
our targets are very optimal. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Please go ahead.
Not able to hear him.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, now a little bit, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Sir, the other day there was a discussion. I participated where the Additional Secretary MNRE participated and Ajay Mathur was also there. They said that there is a serious issue of financing the renewables and the indigenous capacity, which we are, as Rakesh Nath also covered, we are adding not more than 20 gigawatt per year, whereas we need 50 gigawatt per year to achieve our targets. So seriously, we may not achieve the targets, number one. Number two, as Ajay Shankar has said, it is not SECI which is responsible, but the financing and the indigenous capability is coming in the way of adding that much of capacity. Number two, when we say that the renewables are cheaper, we must add to their cost the cost of backing down of the thermal, which is the state capacity in their fixed charge and the efficiency point of view. The regulatory commission must work out how much compensation to be given to them for reducing their capacity and backing down, etc. That is one issue. As one more comment, Alok Kumar said that affordability is a question. Now, these are two things. Our policies are not free power, etc. And what is affordability is not very clear. The free power is going and the cost on the other consumers is increasing of this one. So that is my comment on this.
So one liner from every one of you will close. One liner means maybe a couple of minutes, not more than that. Yes. Ajay?
One thing is that the solar capacity, I also thought potential in the country was limited due to land. But I referred to this Najafgarh experiment where the farmer is getting 1 lakh rupee an income on land where he continues to do agriculture and the solar panel is at a height of 3 meters, which means that the entire agricultural land of India is available for solar power generation. The tariff there is 5.5 rupees, which is a contracted amount with BSEL. So, so that offers an unlimited potential of solar power generation. And the feed-in tariff, which I advocated, where the farmer uses his roof, his place where the cattle is kept, where the fodder is kept, 1 megawatt per village gives us 600,000 megawatts, 600 GW. So I do not see solar capacity constraint due to non-availability of space. The entire problem on solar I see is delay in commencing large-scale grid-scale storage. Without that, the solar capacities will have problems. DISCOM will not be willing to do PPA. But SECI offering DISCOM a PPA with solar and storage, the DISCOM will find it cheaper than new thermal. They will easily sign that contract. And as I said earlier, the power ministry needs to work with DISCOMs that the complacency of 8 years of low demand is behind us. We'll be facing severe power crisis if we do not start contracting new capacity. Thermal PLF is already up to 70%.
Good. Anil?
Yeah, two things, sir, very quickly. One, on the DISCOM side, while we certainly must have a discussion to empathize what's the DISCOM's challenges, but the fact is that the self-created challenges are far more than the actual challenges on ground. Not addressing the issues for far too long has created to a foxpaw that today they are not able to resolve. In fact, the private DISCOMs have proven time and again that despite all the challenges, they've been able to mitigate those hardships on the ground. So I think that's one point that I really want to square up very clearly to say that this is becoming too big an issue. They're continuing to provide some or the other protection to the inefficiency. So that's one part that I wanted to make. The second part that I want to make is, I think some of the rules that we make, for example, ISTS free. Now that is very important to encourage RE, fine. But what is happening is today, such of the states which have land, you mentioned about land, such of the states which have land like Andhra, like Tamil Nadu, like Karnataka, Maharashtra, they are not adding any megawatt today because they feel they will get at the busbar rate of Rajasthan and Gujarat. So if Rajasthan and Gujarat will produce at 265, I will get at 265. Why should I try at 260 or 270 or 275? Now, why can't we create an equalization method to say, to the extent I have to spend in building a transmission line for ISTS free, to that extent I will give you VGF. You please put solar in parallel to what Gujarat is doing. So with the result, I think we either move on this side of the spectrum or this side of the spectrum. We never create an equalization method. ISTS free is a good idea, but it's bad idea if everybody else stops their growth, waiting for a corridor to bring that power free of cost to them. That I think is a worse idea because he's unnecessarily carrying electrons, what he could generate himself, maybe at 5-10 paisa more. Just compensate him for the 5-10 paisa. That's enough. So that's the second point I wanted to make, I guess, which is what is causing the problem. And third, last point that I would say, that potential wise, India has potential, fortunately, in every aspect of generation. We have proven time and again that as a country, we have risen to provide resource adequately when things were ordained the right way, the right structure. And I personally believe that today, if a transmission line has to be done in 24 months, private sector has done it, provided the government has supported on right of way. Similarly, tomorrow, if the challenges are posed, challenges are surmountable. That's not a problem. The problem is simply the fact that we have shoved things too large enough. Today, I can tell you, sir, and just for the mention of Mr. Alok Kumar also, today, we are not doing any PPA for renewables. We have decided we will not do any PPA for renewables. We will only sell to customer 24/7 green solution. And we are not adding small capacity. I'm talking about we are adding one location, 30,000 megawatt. So please be very open to the fact that we can mitigate DISCOM's problem, provided DISCOMs want to mitigate their problem. If they want to just shoo away the customers, then there is, of course, no answer. But there is tremendous potential in this country. And today people are beehiving to put manufacturing facilities, beehiving to put large computing facilities. And I think we should not let that go. That's what where I will end.
Hello? Any?
Sir, just two things. Sir, in nowhere in the world, in my humble opinion, will be feasible to say have a power system entirely on renewable energy. We will have some base load, say supplying generation, either coal or nuclear. So in the long term, net zero, I don't think it will be feasible without nuclear. So coal will continue. We can have some carbon capture and utilization or some biomass blending and all. So I have, because sir, if you see the utilization of storage, if you turn 2000 gigawatt of solar with full storage, the utilization of the storage over the year will be very, very low and the cost will go up. So you have to do detailed modeling and there will be some base load supplying technology with us to the extent of 25-30%. There are issues of solar autonomy and the many challenges will come. So we have not spoken about the DR or DSM. So why to meet the demand blindly in one go that whatever is demand and we will supply for air conditioner and all. Sir, our regulatory system and our power system planners have not paid enough attention to DSM and DR. And so that is one area apart from the virtual PPA, which many corporates are now doing. So I see a multi-pronged solution to this issue of, say, how to handle coal and to what extent nuclear will come. But DR and DSM is one which India is very, very lagging behind. And also, sir, the storage profile and its utilization will have to be seen in detail before we say think of say replacing coal without the substitution of nuclear in India. Thank you.
Rakesh, any last points?
Yeah, I think one thing is very clear that the demand in the country is going to grow much higher than what it has been growing in past 10 years because of the cooling load and of course you can see a lot of transport. Transport is also going electric. I think railway track, around 60% railway track has been electrified and 40% is likely to be electrified in next 4 to 5 years. I was seeing the EV sale figures before coming here and during the last year, 23-24, 17 million EVs were sold, mostly in two-wheeler and three-wheeler. 90% of the sales of three-wheeler are electric. So three-wheeler has gone in a big way into electric. And the four-wheeler electric is also, it's only 1 lakh sale, but it is growing at the rate of 90% every year. And as the new manufacturers are coming with new products and providing customers new models, is going to pick up. So the demand is going to pick up and dependence on the coal as also given in the energy survey also for next 20 to 30 years will depend largely on the coal, not only for meeting the energy, but also for inertia. And for inertia, definitely we'll need coal and nuclear to continue for till we get something, some other solutions. And I think last thing is that we have to improve our operational and financial performance of the distribution system. That is very important because without that, nothing is possible. And we have to identify large areas with huge losses which require augmentation in the upgradation of the distribution system and try alternate method like franchise if you don't want to privatize. Even area around the city, rural area can also be included. I know, I tell you the experience of Agra, where some rural area, 5 to 10 kilometers radius was included. And the collection from that area is very good. People, rural areas also very happy. In fact, the rural areas outside the franchisee is now demanding that we should also be included in the franchisee of Agra, private franchisee, because we get better, because that rural area also become semi-urban now. So they also want continuous power supply. So I think we have to enlarge such pockets, especially in the large T&D areas, large loss areas, the areas which require augmentation in the distribution system.
Pramod, are you still there? Any last minute, last points?
I think what I want to add is, in going back to the discount, we have been stuck with government discom, the privatization has taken place in a small way. Finally, we had to accept that the privatization of discom is something which is necessary. We have to meet all these targets that we are talking about. And that is something which requires a real push. We need to have a separate session only on the end use, that is particularly the discoms health and how to go about it.
Yeah. I think with that, it has been very good. Finally, the point that we have ended with, which is also the thrust of the report of the World Bank. How do we empower the utilities? How do we empower the utilities, or how do we support the utilities, or how do we discipline the utilities, whatever. So we need to do substantial things with reference to the utilities. It could be being sympathetic with them, it could be disciplining them, whether it's by government or by regulatory mechanism. Alok was saying there are many areas which regulators cannot do, governments have to do. So therefore, the thrust of the World Bank report, as the title goes, is the burden on the distribution utilities on account of this energy transition. Burden is definite. Since we are going to make this change, and a rapid change, there is a transition period burden, and that burden, as it is without this transition period challenges, they have an issue, and now with this transition period challenges which are inevitable, because they are being done for something good, something better cause. We have climate change, that is a fact that we need to bring renewables in a big way. Definitely that is a bigger cause. It may go to 50, it may go to 2060, that is a different matter, but it's a bigger cause. Then we are ending also with this, that how do we manage distribution, whether it is Agra example or Delhi example or any other example. That is another subject. So one we will discuss about again, about the mix of generation capacities and supply side management, also demand side management, consumption side management, and at the same time, the changes that are required in terms of the distribution sector responding to these challenges. So maybe both of them or two of them separately, we will have another debate focusing only on these two issues as well suggested by. So thank you very much. It has been very, very useful. This is all will be on YouTube also. That's no problem on that. And therefore, a lot of ideas have come. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.